You know, you got down to that final possession, and I was feeling like maybe there's a chance here. Like maybe this comeback. This is one of those few games this year that the Ravens didn't have a multiple score lead or a lead at all in this one. And I'm telling you, I was sitting here thinking, I'm like, I don't know, man. They might just pull it off. But even though they didn't, it's possible that there's a little bit of promise in a loss. And I know all of us hate moral victories, but with some things possibly shaking the Ravens' way next week. Next up, once again, it's the Bengals. So what does this game mean for next week where you play the same opponent? Is there things to be learned? Is there adjustments to be made? And most importantly, will those adjustments be made? All right, what is going on, good people? Back at it again. DJ here from Bill Productions. Flock Nation speaks. Ravens rewind. Bengals Ravens game. In a game that had playoff implications, and at times it felt like one team was playing for them and one team wasn't. And the Ravens just came out sluggish. They just came out sluggish against, and not even sluggish in a way that we've seen, right? They came out more so sloppy, right? More so just like, somebody said like the Ravens lost their first preseason game in quite a long time, right? Like the personnel was just so different, but they fought though. So that's the tough part about it, right? The Ravens fought, and I think it bodes well coming up against the Bengals again on Sunday Night Football. Now, believe what you may about moral victories and whatnot, but I think there's some opportunity. Real quick, as always, you can always watch or listen to Flock Nation Speaks on Facebook and YouTube. You can listen to Flock Nation Speaks on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, etc., etc. But let's talk about this game, right? The what was it, 27-16 victory that the Bengals ended up getting over the Ravens on Sunday. Ravens with a chance to not technically not win the AFC North, but practically win the AFC North, if that makes sense, right? Because of the cancellation, they were going to get a coin flip possibility if they won, just to kind of make it a little bit fair or whatnot. So, but very very interesting. How the stakes how the stakes of the game on Sunday were, but it didn't matter. It was all for naught anyway. The Bengals were petty. They were upset, right? They were mad that they were gonna have to deal with the coin flip, um, because everybody's supportive until they're not, right? But you know, very just weird how salty they were though, right? Because this is the same team that started off so slow it looked like they weren't even gonna make the playoffs, and then you're in the AFC North race. If they don't start out as slow, this coin flip thing might not even be a thing. In terms of like, the math wouldn't make sense for it at that time, but whatever. But they started out slow, and that, as the Bengals have taken their lumps throughout the season, the Ravens have taken their lumps throughout the season, right? And now coming into the first week of the playoffs, it's very, very interesting. I don't want to get too ahead of myself because, of course, I'll do a preview for the Bengals Ravens game. No matter what, like it's like it might be right before the game, but we gonna do it. But with this particular game that we just witnessed a couple days ago, the Ravens really, we talk about playing a clean game. Like I've been saying that for weeks and weeks and weeks, especially when you got a backup QB, right? And you're missing pieces on offense. I talked about that, like playing a clean game, and Anthony Brown did not play a clean game, right? He started out with 2 picks. There was a fumble to end the half. Like The Bengals got 21 points in the first half off of turnovers. And it kind of, it put the defense in a bad situation. This is one of those games where I can't truly blame the defense, right? Like, I know I've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks, I'm gonna put every loss on the defense because not only, and I'll talk about this here in a little bit too, but not only does the defense have all the tools, right? They just locked up another player in Roquan Smith today. So all the pressure's on them to be great. All the pressure's on them to score. All the pressure's on them to turn people over. I don't care if they're the greatest quarterback of all time. It doesn't matter, right? The pressure's on you. So you got to carry it. So, but this game, I can't really blame them, right? Because in the spots where they needed to shine, they did just that, right? Anthony Brown threw 2 picks early, and that led to touchdowns. And then and the new pieces on the defense, right? With Worley, and was him being Daryl Worley being one of them. He got ate up by Jamar Chase once or twice, but the good part about it was the adjustments that were made, right? Daryl Worley came out and he started hitting people. Daryl Worley came out and he started to get a feel for where he was, get a feel for who he was defending. And I think the defense deserves credit for that, right? The defense allowed 3 points after giving up, after it was 24 to, was it 24-3? If I'm not mistaken, or was it 24? I think it was 24-7 going into halftime. And the defense locked up and gave up 3 points the rest of the game, right? With ample time for the offense to do something. And the offense had some chances. They were down by 2 possessions because this score stood for a little bit. It was 16-27. The Ravens had just strip sacked Joe Burrow. David Ajabo got his first sack, strip fumble, right? If only he could have scooped it in, right? Scooped it up and scored, but he didn't. And the Ravens offense, as it's often done this season, ended up with 3 points after they started in their own goal line. But I mean, not their own goal line. They started, with goal to go. So it's very interesting because the offense played sloppy. But Anthony Brown still put up pretty okay numbers, right, when it comes to stuff like that. And the run game was the run game wasn't even as good as it usually is because Gus went out. You didn't have JK, right? The run game wasn't as good as it used, as it could have been or would have been with those other guys. So offensively, it felt as if the Ravens were kind of behind the 8 ball. You're playing up against a pretty good, at least opportunistic defense who is going to take the ball away from you and kind of put you in the tough under pressure situations. And a team that can defend the run too because they got big bodies up front. So, to see this offense perform, it felt like at least they were semi moving the ball down the field. And I think the other part is too, the defense continued to at least force punts, even when they couldn't force turnovers, which they had. I know they had the strip sack fumble. I don't think they had any picks in this game, if I'm not mistaken. But they had the strip sack fumble, which I mean, and they held Joe Burrow to 215 for 1 touchdown. I know they were up big early. A lot of people might say like they were phoning it in, in the second half. But I mean, if you got your starters out there, I don't think you phoning it in, right? Like you're not putting it truly in cruise control until your starters get out of the game. Like the Ravens did a couple of years ago when, in 2019 when they were sitting guys down in the fourth quarter, right? Like when you got your main players in, especially a week before you hoping to make a playoff run, I think you still playing, I mean, and of course we know the Bengals and the Ravens got history, right? The Bengals have been embarrassed by the Ravens and the Ravens have been embarrassed by the Bengals. So there's history there. And going into next week, I think there's going to be a lot of talking throughout social media and the players probably going to be talking. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think too, like the response of this game, right? It was nice to see Likely getting into this rivalry a little bit, right? Like Likely had a good game. I think he had over 100 yards, like 8 catches, over 100 yards. He had a good game. and he basically said after the game, like, it ain't gonna be like that next time. It's gonna be different, and I like that. I like the confidence of these guys, especially when it comes to a rivalry game. And a lot of people probably think, I don't know, right? And of course, it depends on the status of Lamar too. But even on top of that, taking the offense aside, if the offense plays a clean game, scores touchdowns instead of field goals, which is easier said than done, the other part of that is the defense, right? The defense played well, right? They gave up some points early, but they were in some of the worst positions you can possibly be in, right? Like when you're already inside your 20s starting your drive on defense, I mean that's tough sledding, right? Like that's tough sledding. So, I think the defense, I think you have to praise the defense at least a little bit in this game. Now, albeit I think they still gotta push for more turnovers. They still gotta push for points on the board from their end too. But I think if Lamar can come back next week, I think it or Sunday, it makes it that much more of an interesting game. Because we know the defense, like that's the thing, like as critical as everybody is about the defense is going to show up. They may not show out when they need to show out, but they're going to at least be there, right? Like this defense isn't getting blown away. Like even in this game, it wasn't necessarily the defense's fault that they were getting blown away, but early in the game when it was 24-7, but it's interesting, right? To see how if MP comes back, like what does that mean? And just his grit and his determination too, and just his attitude could be big for this game next week. Marlon, honestly, he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder this year, I think, after what they did last year. Regardless of who's out there, right? Like Marlon, I'm sure, takes last year's game to heart and how that game went, and a lot of it was on his watch too. So, you know, I think the positive, I think there's a positive outlook of this game. Yes, it was a loss, and there could have been still better decision making. Why are you going for it on fourth down when you got a chance to, or why not at least call a better play call? Like I get going for it. You're down 17-0. You feel like you got a good drive going. You got stopped on third down. Like I get going for it. But then again, if they take three right there, it could have changed a little bit of how things were played too. So I, I think the defense played, I think overall the defense was the one that played well. I think the offense, they had their spurts, right? Like they had some big plays. Is the thing. Like Sammy Watkins had that big play down the field when it was a two possession game, and Sammy Watkins had that big play down the field and then fumbled. Demarcus Robinson not being able to hang on to the ball when it comes to making a reception, like that was big. Likely had made some pretty big plays. So and the running backs were here and there. They were kind of spotty, but the offense found a way. Prochet was another one, right? Prochet somehow stepping out of bounds, making the biggest play of his probably career at that point, and then it doesn't even count for anything, in a big moment. So when you need it, right? So I mean, the mistakes, I think that was the biggest thing from the offensive end. I mean, yes, you got inexperienced guys out there, but I mean, Prochet's been here for a little bit, right? Sammy Watkins knows he needs to take care of the football. Anthony Brown is the only one that doesn't get a pass, but you're still thinking, well, shoot, he's an undrafted rookie, so I got to give him got to grade him on a curve a little bit, but I think if Lamar Jackson can suit up on Sunday, it changes everything, because with this defense playing in the way that they are, if you can just put 1 to 2 more touchdowns on the board, right? Imagine this game with 1 to 2 more touchdowns on the board. Like that right there is just an 8-point swing, which isn't enough to win you this game per se. But if you don't settle for field goals in some of these situations, but like just imagine, right? Just imagine getting that turnover and scoring a touchdown as opposed to a field goal, right? So, if Lamar can suit up, I think it changes how this game goes coming on Sunday night. Now, will he? Who knows, right? I'm gonna try to wait until we kind of know a little bit more about what's gonna go down with Lamar next week. But I think at the same time, like I think that, and I've talked about this before. I think the defense, and that's the thing about this defense, because yes, situationally they've been bad, but although they've been bad situationally, it's felt like at least they've been able to kind of make the adjustments uh, throughout the game. Like they did a pretty good job. They figured out a way to keep the Bengals out of the end zone and really not allow them to truly even move the ball. Calais was back, so the run game, couldn't get going for the Bengals. But at the same time, with the weapons that they have, it's tough to defend, right? It's tough to defend Boyd, Chase, and Higgins out there, But I think at the same time, like this defense played physical, right? Like Roquan has brought that kind of physicality back. That like, you're not just gonna come across the middle of the field. You're not just gonna catch the ball on me and celebrating all this, right? And that's a good thing. Speaking of Roquan Smith was re-signed by the Ravens for I think it was a 5-year, $100 million deal. I think if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that. I might be wrong about the numbers, but I know he was extended for 5 years, I think. But it's crazy to think, man. And I look it up real quick too. But it's crazy. It's crazy, with the Roquan situation because yes, once again, kind of like I think a lot of us feel the same way. Like it's a good trade. He's a great player. He's worth paying the money for. But I think at the same time, it was 5 mil, 100 million with 45 guaranteed. I think. Um, it's it's one of those things where you're just like, well, but when are they going to help the offense, right? When are they going to help the offense become a better offense, right? This defense was good without Roquan. Now, albeit Roquan brings intangibles that this defense was lacking, right? So it's a good signing. It's a word. I mean, I honestly I've been saying this for a while. I think they should keep Roquan and Lamar, if at all possible. But at the same time, that's tough too because you're trying to pay the top linebacker at this position and one of the top quarterbacks at his position, probably the top quarterback considering what he had to do with less. So, your generational talent at quarterback. So, can you get that done? That's going to be the question. And Lamar's reaction, being hyped for his guy, that's good to see if you're a Ravens fan or if you want to read into that type stuff. But of course, he's going to be, right? Lamar, like the crazy part is, I think sometimes like we read too much into not the dirt sheets per se, but we read too much into the rumors of Lamar's not showing up on he's not on the training table and he's holding in and all this, and sometimes you forget like Lamar hasn't shown these tendencies, right? And I get it, business makes you act different, right, to a certain degree, but Lamar hasn't given us a reason to feel like he would quit on the team. Lamar hasn't given us a reason, like even us as like and I don't want to say logical people, but just like normal, regular people, regular human beings, right? Like even us, like we can understand why Lamar would be thinking in the ways that he possibly could be thinking. None of that confirmed, right? But at the same time, Lamar has not given us a reason to even think that way, right? We reading too much into everything and trying to see what you want the scoop, right? I get it. You want the scoop. I want the scoop. I want the inside scoop. Is Lamar playing this week? Right? Oh, he posted the post on Instagram, right? So he playing, right? Like it's been 5 weeks, 6 weeks, like he playing, right? Like I get it. Like I understand. I get it. But at the same time, like it's one of those things where it's like you don't know until you know, right? You don't know until you know. And the Roquan Smith thing, I think, is frustrating to some people because they're like, well, what about Lamar, right? Why does Lamar have 5 years being drafted by this team, 5 years pretty much under his belt, where he has saved jobs, where he has had to do more with less, hasn't had the greatest talent around him, right? Has had to lead the team in passing, lead the team in rushing, beat literally everything to this team, and they for some reason can't find the money. But then when it's Roquan Smith, the money just rains out the sky, right? Like they found the money tree, they shook it a little bit harder for this one, and I understand why people are upset about that. Because for me, like, yes, Roquan Smith is worth signing, even for the Ravens, right? A team who probably don't even really need defensive help, but the capital you gave up for him, I get it, right? I get it. You want to return on that investment, but at the same time, why ain't that tree shaking for Lamar yet, right? Why is it taking so long? Because, and we all know this, the longer the Ravens wait, the worse it's going to become, because Lamar is going to get his money, whether it's from the Ravens or not. And you're going to end up in a couple of different situations, because you should have paid him before Josh Allen got his money, right? But you didn't. So now you got to pay him after Deshaun Watson got his. And, that's a tough contract to swallow, even though, like I said before, I can guarantee you the Browns going to find a way to put talent around Deshaun Watson. I can guarantee you that, right? The Cardinals going to find a way to make sure Kyler Murray got his money and the coach he won't. And Kyler Murray ain't done nothing in this league yet. So, and he got his money. So, my thing is, I want to see, I want to see how this is going to develop, right? I really do. As my camera then decided it was done with me for the night, which probably means I need to wrap up. but yeah, like it's just it's one of those things, man, where it just seems like when is this deal going to get done? Like the cool part is Roquan's, done. The whole he don't have an agent excuse, that's over, because Roquan didn't have one. So now we learn if the Ravens are going to make the biggest investment in their history right now, right? Joe was a big investment when they made it, and I get it. They kind of got burned on it because they weren't smart enough with the cap to figure out how to build around him. But, and they had a couple of injury-riddled seasons too on top of that. But when it comes down to it, they got to figure it out, right? They got to figure it out. Got to make the money tree shake however it's got to. But anyway, as always, definitely hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys on the next one, because my camera is saying, hey, it's time to go. It's time to go. But definitely hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be back with a preview of the Ravens wild card matchup against the Bengals in Cincinnati. Did they learn from their previous mistakes, or is it going to be one of those situations where it's like, had they learned from anything this season, right? Like, well, we'll see what happens. But definitely hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys on the next one. Like this on, like what's on your screen. You can always watch or listen to Fly Nation Speaks, YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all of those. We'll see you guys on the next one. Until next time.